Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Neeru Tandon, Associate Professor, Department of English, VSST College, Kanpur. It is paper 3rd, 19th century English literature. This is module 21, Charles Dickens, written by myself. Charles Dickens, a name associated with social reform. Charles Dickens, a name associated with the common people, who has taken social problems as his mission to write through his literature, just purge those evils from the society. There are two types: art for art's sake and art for society's sake. Charles Dickens stands for the second thing: art for society's sake, literature for society's sake. He used literature as a platform to eradicate evils from the society. He wanted to draw attention towards the social problems, especially related with child. So he wrote his novels on child abuse, he wrote his novels on child workers and different other problems. The way he wrote these novels, of course, as a work of art, they are supreme. More than that, they are enjoyable and they touch your heart. So in this module, we are going to have Charles Dickens as a novelist, introduction of the novel, story, setting, plot, genre and form of the novel. Structure of the novel will be discussed. Then the literary devices used in The Great Expectations. After that, we will discuss briefly the major characters of the novel and some other interesting facts related with the novel. Now, just to start with, we should know who the writer is as a man. He was a great writer, but with a childhood that was stormed. His father, John Dickens, his mother, Elizabeth Barrow, father was a naval clerk, financially comfortable previously, but then destitute. Parents were sent to prison and he was homeless. Charles, his complete name was Charles John Huffam Dickens. He was born on February 7th, 1812. It was during the Victorian era that Dickens crested the heights of fame and fortune, so much so that by the time of his death, he had become, and in many ways still remains, the second most famous Victorian after the Queen herself. Known widely as a versatile English writer, a novelist with a social cause and a generalist with a reformative zeal, Charles Dickens became a synonym for English literature of the Victorian era. When Charles was just 12 years old, his father was sent to Detours prison, and due to this, Charles had to leave his studies. He had to start working as a child laborer in a factory that handled blacking or shoe polish. The problems that he had suffered over there touched his heart, and that he narrated in his later novels. Dickens's time at the blacking warehouse influenced his later work of fiction. So we find themes of child mistreatment, child abuse, child labor repeatedly throughout his fiction. On the strength of this success, Charles married Catherine Hogarth. They had some good relations previously, but later he realized that they are not meant for each other. First, they took separate bedrooms in 1857, and then in June 1858, Catherine and Charles were legally separated. He admitted, I quote his lines, he said, "Poor Catherine and I are not made for each other, and there is no help for it. It is not only that she makes me uneasy and unhappy, but that I make her so too, and much more so." Honest Dickens, he was separated from his wife, but in 1857, a middle-aged Charles Dickens began an adulterous affair with a teenager Ellen Nellie Ternan that would end only with his death. He contributed a series of impressions and sketches to other newspapers and magazines, signing some of them Boz, and his first book was published in 1836 as Sketches by Boz. Dickens could not manage with his wife Catherine, but he was a responsible husband. He was very much attached to Catherine's sister Mary, who died in his arms after a brief illness in 1837. He really did a good care of her. Her death is fictionalized as the death of little Nell in one of his novels. Dickens took a ring from Mary's lifeless finger, placed it on his own finger, where it remained until the day he died. Such was the effect of Mary's death on him that for the first time and the only time in his life, he found himself unable to write, and the next installment of Pickwick Papers and Oliver Twist failed. He wrote many books. Some important books by him: Oliver Twist, Old Curiosity Shop, Dombey and Son, David Copperfield, Bleak House, A Tale of Two Cities, and Great Expectations made him what he is. Now let us discuss in detail a major novel by Charles Dickens, that is Great Expectations. It was first published in serial form in the publication All the Year Round. It has been adapted for stage and screen over 250 times. Pip, the narrator, is about 57 years old when he tells this story. The novel can be considered semi-autobiographical of Dickens, like much of his story is based on the experiences of his life and people. The title of this novel, Great Expectations, the title refers to Pip's great expectations. Pip is the hero of this novel, which are many-dimensional and ever-evolving. His great expectations arrive in the form of his fortune and are embodied in his dream of becoming a true gentleman. Now, although the novel is written in first person, the reader knows it well that Great Expectation is not an autobiography. It is autobiographical, but it is a work of fiction. There are characters, plot, protagonist, everything is there. So let us come to the story and the characters. We find the story in the voice of Pip, as he calls himself. The name is Philip. We find Pip as an orphan. Parents passed away, and Pip was raised by his sister and brother-in-law. Joe is a major character in the life of Pip. He is Pip's brother-in-law. He is blacksmith by profession, silent and kind-hearted man. Pip is an orphan and he meets Magwitch, who is a convict, and his life changes. Young Pip, who lives with his abusive sister and kind brother-in-law, Pip brings a convict food and a file to escape, but the convict is recaptured the next day. But even then, he was successful in leaving his mark on his mind. Upon his uncle's request, Pip visits a wealthy Miss Havisham and falls in love at first sight, with her adopted daughter Estella. Pip, financed by Miss Havisham, becomes a blacksmith apprentice but wishes to be a gentleman. so as to win over Estella. That was the expectation, and this expectation was great. A mysterious benefactor fulfills his wishes. Pip goes to London and spends beyond his means. He learns that Magwitch, the convict he helped, is his benefactor and not Miss Havisham. Estella plans to marry another man. Heartbroken Pip keeps on working. In the meantime, Miss Havisham dies. Pip discovers Estella is Magwitch's daughter. Yes, the same Magwitch who was his secret benefactor. Magwitch dies in prison. Joe pays off Pip's debt and Pip goes to Cairo to become a clerk. Later, he comes to widowed and kinder Estella. The novel ends that Pip goes to meet Estella, and after a brief conversation, they come out hand in hand. Dickens has not clarified the proper ending in his own words, but rather he suggests that now Estella is changed. Now he could just make it happen with Estella. Now Estella could realize the depth of his love for her, and they come out hand in hand. Now let us discuss plot and structure of the novel. Charles Dickens is said to have explored a new ground in this novel, Great Expectations. The theme of self-knowledge explored in the novel expresses in part Dickens's own search for a sense of self. People regard and they suggested that Pip has a touch of Dickens in him, and he is fictional but autobiographical as well. Structurally, the novel is a narration by a mature and retrospective Pip. It is divided into 3 distinct stages, each labeled as a specific stage of Pip's expectations, Pip's great expectations. In a chronological sequence, these chapters trace Pip's progress from a child to adolescent and then young adult. This is a journey from acceptance of his true place in the society. In terms of plot and structure, it is also a journey from a small town to the city and then to a town again, completing the full circle. The first stage introduces all the major characters and sets the plot in motion. Pip is introduced and his situation and context are developed fully. Even we are told about the first seeds of his desire to be uncommon, to be a gentleman, in order to win the heart of his lady love, Estella. This leads to the revelation by Mrs. Jaggers, the lawyer, that Pip is to inherit a huge fortune and become a gentleman. This sounds miraculous as well, mysterious, another important quality of romantic literature. This stage describes the spendthrift and idle way Pip squanders wealth and what kind of person he has become. On the surface of things, Pip believes that he is living up to his great expectations, satisfied but in search of something. He also has the expectation that he will be able to marry Estella. But this stage of his expectation is completely shattered when the benefactor discloses his identity to Pip. In this part, gradually Pip's expectations of himself rise as the plot develops. The second stage of Pip's expectations involves a change of setting. In this section, Pip's development into a gentleman is explored and the journey continues. The third stage of Pip's expectations explores the complete collapse of Pip's great expectations, making him realize how false are these expectations. The old and false expectations are replaced by new and more mature perspectives in life. We see in him developing a sense of respectability and responsibility. The novel, though divided into these three stages, yet further we can divide into episodic chapters due to the publication of the novel in the serial form. Each chapter must necessarily have a complete movement as well as some sort of trigger that will just induce the reader to buy the magazine the following week, in order to see what will happen next. So, in this novel, Charles Dickens has concentrated on various important themes. Some are social injustice, child abuse, self-deception, fear and guilt, relationships, snobbery and vanity, and false and great expectations. The novel was adapted into a movie many times. Charles Dickens is a great social activist who said, "A word in earnest is as good as a speech." The novel Great Expectation has got various tones. It is comic, it is cheerful, it is satirical, it is wry, critical, sentimental, dark, dramatic, foreboding, gothic, and sympathetic as well. We are surprised. How could Charles Dickens infused so many things into one story? But that's why we call him genius. Themes of Great Expectations are also various. Ambition and the desire for self-improvement, like social, economic, educational, and moral, all are there. Guilt, criminality, and innocence can be taken as themes. The growth from childhood to adulthood, the importance of affection, loyalty, and sympathy over social advancement and class superiority, the difficulty of maintaining superficial, moral, and social categories in a constantly changing world. That is again a theme taken by Charles Dickens. Dickens has used various motifs like crime and criminality, disappointed expectations, the connection between weather or atmosphere and dramatic events. He has used symbols like stopped clocks at her house symbolizes Miss Havisham's attempt to stop time. Many objects relating to crime and guilt like gallows, prison, handcuff, policemen, lawyers, court, convicts, chains, files, frequently they appear. They symbolize the theme of guilt and innocence. Now there is ambiguity also, and simply good nature is also present. We find that Charles Dickens, after using motifs and symbols, just concentrates on character delineation as well. To sum up, let's consider Great Expectations at a glance. We are introduced to young Pip, who lives with his abusive sister, and kind-hearted brother-in-law, Mr. Joe, who helps him. He comes in contact with a convict and he helps him. That convict escapes from there, but later on caught by the police. Pip becomes a blacksmith's apprentice but wishes to be a gentleman so that he can marry Estella, the love of his life and the adopted daughter of Miss Havisham. A mysterious benefactor grants him all his wishes. Pip goes to London to become a gentleman. Then he comes to know that his secret benefactor is Magwitch, the same convict. And later on, he proves to be a father of Estella as well. Estella plans to marry another man. Miss Havisham dies. Pip discovers Estella is Magwitch's daughter. Magwitch also dies in prison. Joe pays off Pip's debts and he becomes a clerk. Later he reconnects with the widower Estella and he believes that they are united forever. I will like to give some comments of critics about this novel. Very important is a comment by David Cecil. I quote his lines. Dickens is the most representative of Victorian novelists. Some will contend that he is also the greatest. No doubt, he lacks the profundity of George Eliot, the consuming passion of the Bronte sister, yet he surpasses them all in his basic humanity and an amazingly fecund imagination. Indeed, Dickens was not of his country alone, but of the entire world. Unquote. Charles Dickens' message to all: never break four things in your life, that is trust, relation, promise and heart, because when they break, they don't make noise but pains a lot. Another message that I always try to imbibe, he said, the most important thing in life is to stop saying I wish and start saying I will. Thank you. For further discussion and more details, please consult EPG Pathshala text and other things. Thank you.